Welcome to the AngelsWin podcast with former Angels broadcaster Richter Rojas, featuring Geoff Stoddart and Chuck Richter. And now it's time to talk about some baseball. Victor, take it away.
Time once again for the AngelsWin podcast. I'm Victor Rojas along with Geoff Stoddart and Chuck Richter. This is episode number 19. We thank you so much for joining us, boys. It's good to have the band back together again. Cheers.
Indeed. Thanks for holding it down last week.
Yeah, well, I'm glad we were able to do that. It's kind of weird. I was just out in the family room watching GCU soccer take on Oregon, and they're up 1-0.
Ropes up.
And Mattingly's doing sideline reporting. So it's like I go from that to I forgot she does our open, and it's kind of cool. So anyways, Lopes up. And
Lopes up.
Jeff, I'd like to say that we missed you last week, but I think we got along just fine without you.
Did you even notice we were gone? I'm a little offended by the high view count and download counts. You guys are all breaking my heart.
Told you, bro. Just go shirtless.
Nobody needs to see that.
Let's go. Show me what you're made of. Well, if this is the first time you're joining us, obviously, typically on AngelsWin podcast, we go back in time, take a look at what happened last week. We'll talk about some different kind of things, and there's plenty to talk about. And then we take a look ahead. Obviously, since for a while now, the Angels have been out of it, so it's going to be more of a loose type show. In that, I know people are complaining about the mailbag and not getting to the mailbag, and.
You have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I do, as a matter of fact. Jeff, I'm glad you asked. Thanks for teeing me up. Look, if there are times where we get to questions, oftentimes when we discuss things, we generally answer most of the questions that are in the mailbag because Jeff does a phenomenal job of going through that. And I guess my only retort to that, if you don't like what we're doing, and you'd like your own questions answered, start a podcast. It's very easy. We can show you how to do it. We'll do a tutorial, and you could do your own podcast and answer your own questions as you like and go from there. But we do our best. Look, a podcast, for me, the way I look at it, if we get to the questions, that's just like icing on the cake, right? I think the whole genesis of ours is we're focused on the team and what they've done this past week. We focus on topics of whether it's an injured player or a trade deadline or whatever, and then we look ahead. What do the Angels need to do? I mean, that's kind of the gist of our show. Periodically, when there's things like what happened last week that pop up, the Tommy John surgery situation, we'll do a special show and we'll focus in on that and give you our 2 cents. We try to stay on track, but I think we've said it from day one, is that oftentimes we will just let the conversation dictate where we go. We don't have a script. We used to, when we first started, used to text each other. It's like, hey, let's talk about these talking points. Now it's like, it's no script at all, nothing. It's like, hey, let's go figure it out. And we know we're going to talk Angels baseball. We might talk about some Jimmy Buffett, by the way. God rest his soul.
To Jimmy.
Long live Margaritaville. And we might talk about other things. But I just wanted to get that out there, that we try to do our very best. So, Chuck, I mean, is that fair, what I just stated?
Oh, absolutely. And we're not trying to model anybody else's
Couldn't
podcast.
care less.
I mean,
Right.
Yeah, I don't care what anybody else does.
Right.
What works for somebody else, great. I mean, we're our own. We got our own thing going on here, and we're unique in that. We have some things that we kind of want to talk about, but we just let it play out as if it was 3 dudes at a sports bar getting together once a week and talking about things that are on their mind.
Exactly.
And that's exactly what I envisioned for this podcast, and it's exactly what has played out. And I couldn't be happier.
What I will say, and we'll add, is that next time that we do a spot start, if you will, of a podcast, that we have sirens when we do the tweet, the red sirens, and podcast special or whatever, however Ben Verlander tweeted his thing out there so that
In all
everyone
caps.
realized. Yeah. Is there any chance I can get my 7 minutes back after listening to that? I mean, that was. Let me rephrase my 4.5 minutes, because after the 3 minutes of commercials, we got the nugget, if you will, of what was going on, the update, which was essentially whatever Nez Bolello, Shohei's agent, shared with Beth. So I hope I didn't, break any confidentiality agreements by divulging that information. I am assuming that that's who the source is, a very tight-end source.
Yeah.
If that's fair.
I think the other thing too is all the players that the Angels put on waivers. That was another big thing that happened since we last spoke.
Yep.
And I don't know if you guys seen the amount of meltdowns on Twitter from Angels fans. I just couldn't wrap my mind around just the hyperbole that was going on. Oh, this is it. It's time to boycott. It's don't ever buy another ticket to go to a ball game. Don't watch a game on TV. Don't buy any more merch. It's the only way Artie's going to sell. And I'm like, shut the fuck up. Listen, I'll watch the team if I want to watch the team, because I have been a fan since 79.
Yeah.
And I look for things that, in a losing season that, that are for the future.
Tell him, Chuck. Preach.
Oh, man, don't get – hey. I just had a drink. I mean, I'm just getting started, man. But listen, it just bugs me that these 20-something-year-olds that just became fans in the last 5-10 years are going to tell me what it's like to go through this shit. I've been through the 90s, okay? The 90s sucked. And 95 was great until August, and then it was the worst experience as a fan that I've ever been through in those last 2 months of the season. In that one-game playoff with the Mariners, I cried like a baby, and I was in my 20s, and it's like, listen, man, don't tell me I'm a fan of this team, and I will be a fan of this team going forward. I don't care if Artie Moreno's the owner or if it's somebody else. This is my team, and I will root for this team, and I will look, as I've said in other podcasts in the past, I will look for silver linings to look for the future, like Shanuel and Rengifo has been just killing it. These are guys that are going to be a part of the team next year. Ohapi, the Netos, the Kyron Parises. There are things to look in a positive light towards the future. And that's what I'm doing, because the Angels are out, obviously. We've said this 3-4 episodes ago. Mm-hmm. This is what I look forward to. Don't tell me if I should watch another Angels game or go to a game. I'll do it where the fuck I want. Get out of here.
Wow.
That'll do it for episode number 19. That's Chuck Richter on the dial there. But, hey, by the way,
cue the outro music.
Those glasses, I see you in those glasses, and I feel like you should be donning a leather jacket with wild hogs on the back and jumping on a hog.
I got one in the next room.
Go swimming in a random watering hole somewhere with Patrick O'Neill popping up out of the water.
Oh gosh!
Did you know that he's in that movie? You know he's in that movie, right? Wild Hogs.
Oh, what?
Okay, so you know the scene in Wild Hogs when the guys are hot and they jump in, they're in a little lake or pond. They're naked in there and they're swimming around. Tim Allen, John Travolta, they're all doing that. The family that arrives with the 2 kids and the wife and jump in the lake, Patrick O'Neill is the father in that movie. And he's the one that swims underwater, I think up to Travolta or Tim Allen, and then pops right up. And then Lee is like, kids in the car. That's Patty O. Yeah.
That's funny. That's hilarious.
There you go. Yeah. Fun facts.
Yeah, fun facts. See, you get it all here on the AngelsWin podcast.
Now I need to feel like I need to deep dive into his IMDb profile and see what else we can dig up there.
He was in one of the diehards. I don't know which one. Obviously,
really?
He got killed.
It couldn't have been one. It couldn't have been one because I've seen that 100 times.
I don't think it was one, but I think he got killed. But the Wild Hogs ones, we watched it because we liked that movie, and then I told the kids about it. Now that's all they think about is when they see Patty O. No, kids, get in the car.
Here's one for you. I auditioned for the role of Alex P. Keaton on Family Ties.
Get out of here.
I could have been Michael J. Fox and had that whole
Wow.
Back to the Future franchise. Yeah.
Holy
Yeah.
smokes.
That's
What could
very
have been?
cool. How
What
far
could have
did you
been?
get in the process?
Let's see. So there was the cattle call, and I
Right.
got called up to the director's desk from my group of 5 that walked through, and they asked me a couple questions, took my name and number, and that was all I ever got. But that was more than the other 4 that were in my group, and
for
more
sure.
than
That's a freaking win for you.
That's cool, dude.
How old
Yeah.
were you at that time?
Oh, geez. I was in high school still, so yeah.
Fun fact. That's
Very
a cool
cool.
fun. I didn't even know that. I've known you for how many years?
I know.
Gosh,
Almost 20
That's very
years.
cool, brother. Very
Yeah.
cool.
that's
Fucking
sweet.
Hollywood.
What are we all drinking tonight, by the way?
Something very strong.
Good.
Very, very strong.
Guys, in honor of Jimmy Buffett,
Yes, sir.
I'm having his tequila on the rocks with a splash of lime juice.
Nice.
And that
Nice.
was his go-to. He quit having regular margaritas because he found them too sugary, as they are, as you well know, with all that syrup they put in there decades ago. And so that's his jam, and that's why I'm wearing the
Nice.
Caribbean, shirt, and
Love
yeah,
I like it.
We're going to have some cheeseburgers in paradise after the show.
sweet.
There you go.
And Kim had some margaritas last night, so
There you go.
There you go.
yeah.
Nice.
All right, let's pretend we know what we're doing here. Let's talk some Angels baseball.
Oh boy.
Let's start with the elephant in the room is the situation that happened last week as far as the players going on waivers. And I listen to MLB radio, pretty much every morning. And at times it gets tiresome, and especially the last week and a half, it's been about the Angels, right? Especially coming up on the Thursday deadline. Every player, every transaction had to be completed on the 31st so that they could qualify for the postseason roster. And those players needed to be on those teams. Teams that were claiming players needed to have a roster spot available for them, and so on and so forth. Look, MLB Radio crushed the Angels. I think it was Steve Phillips, and to the point where he felt, as someone who had been a general manager, he felt offended. I don't know how you feel offended by the process, and I think there was more to it in that something like this that could impact a pennant race. Never mind that prior to this collective bargaining agreement, all teams could expand their roster to 40 players and impact a pennant race.
Oh,
Let's
sure.
set that nugget aside for a moment. Okay.
Right.
But this is offensive. I look at it from this standpoint, and I'll just say my piece. I'll let you guys jump into it. Are the optics, in the Angels' favor? No, clearly not. With the way things have played out, with Shohei having to have the eventual Tommy John surgery, it doesn't look good. The team just poo-pooed the bed from the time of the trade deadline to the time they made the decision to put those guys on waivers. So it clearly doesn't look good. It's just another layer of, just see if you could top yourself on making mistakes, if you will, right? And just not looking good from a brand perspective. But that being said, there are no rules whatsoever in the collective bargaining agreement that prevent this. The Angels are in a precarious position because they acquired X amount of players. It didn't work out. And now they have the opportunity to get rid of those players, and more specifically their salary, so that they can get below the total salary cap for the year, which, by the way, it's a running total currently. That doesn't get calculated until the year is over, just so we are clear. Mm-hmm. And that's why there's some gray area as to where they currently stand. And I know there was a move today with Max Stassi that changes the dynamic of how much more they save going into the month or the rest of the month of September. Setting that aside, they did everything by the rules. They didn't break any rules. This is not a they found something that they can exploit. No, we're not going to get there with the guys we have. Let's see if we can get under the salary cap or the competitive balance tax number. And if we do that and Shohei walks, well, then our comp pick is going to be between the second and third round. If they are over and are a first-time offender, they will pay a tax on that overage. And if Shohei leaves, assuming the Angels offer a qualifying offer, which they will, if Shohei leaves and you're over, then that comp pick for Shohei is after the fourth round. So there's a considerable difference between where those picks are, about 60 to 70 slots, depending on who's got comp picks and so on and so forth.
Right.
That's a big number, right? End of second round, end of fourth round, and the quality player that you could get. So I understand the dynamics behind it. I think I think the Angels, for their effort, at least they tried to they plugged the hole at first base, they plugged the hole in the outfield, they got a starting pitcher, they got a bullpen piece, all things that they needed at that time. Whether you want to argue all in doesn't necessarily really mean Lucas Giolito and the gang. Some people would look at all in as Verlander, Scherzer.
Right.
That's an all in move. But you also didn't have the players at the minor league level or at the major league level, unless you're willing to trade like a Zach Neto as part of a package, to get those type of guys, right? So you've got rentals. Guys are going to be free agents. Guys you cannot offer qualifying offers to because they were traded in their free agent year. So might as well try to play it out. Didn't work out. Okay, if we can move them, they get claimed, get them off our books. That's how I feel about it. I wasn't offended. I thought it was kind of a genius move, to be perfectly honest with you. Get the money off the books. Again, does it look good? No. Considering everything that's gone on in the last month. But they've getting to that point. That's why they did it. And I'll let you guys, give me your 2 cents on it.
I think, the way that you unpack that is such an important point. So many people were complaining about, they're giving up. They're throwing in the towel. They're raising the white flag. Well, one, yes, they are. But folks, listen to us. The season's over. It's done. They're not going to the playoffs. It's not going to happen. This is something we've been talking about for weeks now. So enjoy the last month of the season. Let's hope we see some nice baseball from some of the youngins.
Right.
But what Victor just unpacked is actually why you can say they're not giving up. They're making good business decisions for good reasons for next year, should things unfold the way that we think that they probably will. So this is smart. It's a good thing. Again, does it look good? No, but what exactly would look good at this stage? Right. Keeping them around only to, again, we're not making the playoffs, so what are we getting out of that? Move them along. Give them a shot. Maybe a team will pick them up that's going to the postseason, and they'll get a crack at that.
Can I add just what, Chuck?
Sure.
I just want to add one thing. In the past, you could in the past, I'll just say this. The majority of teams put pretty much every single player on waivers because at the time, prior to this CBA, they were called revocable waivers.
Right.
Meaning you could pull those players right off. And oftentimes you would get teams that would do that, guys that have big money contracts or dead money, whatever the case may be, and hoping that a team makes a claim and the team that had him says, he's yours, right? And I know I'm really just trying to simplify it as much as possible. So the fact that the optics look bad for the Angels is because, Tyler Anderson at one point was put on, I guess, the week before, right? Well, big money. It's a 3-year deal. He's been awful this year, and he's got, big money due the next 2 years. So if someone claimed him, you're hoping somebody claimed him, that money is off your books. that stuff's been going on for a long time. This isn't new. What's new this year is that you have one trade deadline. In the past, you had basically had two. You had the hard trade deadline, and then you had the soft one in which revocable waivers, someone claimed a player. You could work out a deal, usually for a minor league player. That team acquiring the player soaks up that contract. I'll give you a player. That's how it used to work. Now that's gone. Now all you do is put the players on waiver and hope, if you're the Angels, they get claimed for the reasons we just laid out. There's also that possibility that the players that were put on waivers could go unclaimed. They could have said 29 teams could have passed on Lucas Giolito and he'd still be an Angel. Hunter Renfroe still be an Angel. Ronaldo Lopez, Matt Moore. All those guys could still be Angels. Teams saw something in Hunter Renfroe. Cincinnati Reds saw something in Hunter Renfroe. Their numbers in the outfield this year have been putrid. So they figured, let's take a flyer on Hunter, right? That's all how it works out. I was a little surprised what the Guardians did, at the time being 5 games out and claiming as many guys as they did.
Right.
Yeah.
But that's just how the whole BS of, if you did this in a fantasy league, you would get kicked out of a league.
Oh gosh, spare me.
Are you
We're not
serious?
playing fantasy baseball.
Exactly.
And that's to your earlier point, Victor, about Steve Phillips. He's an ex-GM.
Yeah.
And did he forget how to be a GM and what it means to make these types of moves? I know he's on XM Sirius, MLB Network,
Right.
and him, but it's not just him. It's many of these guys that have been in baseball. They stirred the pot, man, and the Angel fans just went wild with it.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Season over. Season over? It was over a month ago.
Right.
Get out of here. And Lucas what does it benefit to keep Lucas Giolito, who can't even keep the ball in the park? Hunter Renfroe is the worst in baseball with runners in scoring position.
Yeah.
Okay. All these guys they put on waivers have just been, with the exception of Matt Moore, haven't been good.
Yeah,
I mean, Lopez had a little.
Matt hasn't been good since he came back from being injured. He's just been.
He hasn't been himself, right?
Yeah, he's been. But to the point of, kind of freaking out over all this stuff. Again, I get it. People are. They're just tired of the Angels being on the front page and fans from other teams crushing them and the national media crushing them. And so I get the frustration. I totally do. I think it's, I was texting with Eduardo Perez while Phillips was doing his little rant. And I'm like, I mean, that's a big old hang with him, to be perfectly honest with you. I mean, the Angels thought of trying to get under the cap as something that is important to them so that they do, if Shohei walks, they do get that comp pick where they want it between the second and third round.
Right.
Look, you can't I think we're all in agreement that I think the Angels missed the boat as far as trading Shohei. Not necessarily trading Shohei, but fully exploring every single opportunity to make your organization better by possibly moving Shohei. And I said from day one, if the right package is there, I think you've got to make that move. Yeah. I think you've got to make that move because you keep the guys that you have in the system that you traded away, plus you get the 4 or 5 other guys that you're going to get for Shohei, and the opportunity to go out and try to sign Shohei in the offseason as well and show him, no pun intended, look what we did. We look at the talent that we added to help you going into next year. And on top of that, there's still some free agent guys that we can go out to plug even more holes. Yep. And now you've kind of reset the clock, if you will, to 24. And if he walks, that's his right to walk. You've got your farm system, which was at 29 when the trade deadline hit, 30th afterward. You're devoid now of those 5 players that you got rid of. Shohei walks. Now what do you do going into 24? And that's the biggest question. So it's like, I get that the negativity behind it and the timing is awful. It sucked. but I absolutely think it was a smart move. And it wasn't, look, people are either don't care about the whole ownership situation, or you hate Artie Moreno and you want him to sell. That's pretty much, those are the two factions that we're talking about right now, right?
And the latter is most of our mailbag.
Well, there's no doubt. Look, everyone has the right to their opinion. But to say that, oh, he did this so that he can save money, that, it like almost as if he's taking those funds and he gets to keep them in his pocket, right?
Right.
Yacht fuel.
Yeah, that's not the point. The point is, if you're running a franchise, you've got a competitive balance tax threshold that you can't go above. If you do, you're going to pay a tax on it, and it goes up the second time, consecutive years. The third time, it goes up even more, right? And you start losing draft picks, and there are implications behind it. So if you're going to go ahead and go above, and the Angels tried it, meaning they acquired the players and said, okay, if this gives us an opportunity, we're going to go ahead and do it and become a first-time offender. It didn't work out. Hey, if we don't need to start that clock on the first-time offender thing, let's see if we can get out of it. That's all that was. I mean, that's basically what they did. And we still don't know if they are underneath. We'll have to wait and see with the guys that got claimed, plus Stassi and all that stuff. We'll see how that all plays out. And it's not so much the number, right? Even if you're a dollar over, if you're over that number, you're a first-time offender. That comp pick goes from the end of the second round and to the fourth round. So there's just a number of variables. And I get the frustration. I understand it. I empathize with you. If you have your opinion, you want to get rid of Artie, that's totally on you. And you can have all the hashtags you want. An owner of a franchise is going to be the owner of the franchise till he doesn't want to be the owner of the franchise. End of story. That's it. There's nothing you can say or do. Now, you may take the approach of you don't want to buy stuff, you don't want to go to the game, you don't want to pay for parking, and hope that there's an impact and he changes his mind. That's totally your prerogative. That's totally your prerogative to have. And I hold no ill will towards you. But it's like, I got more important things to worry about than what an owner's going to do. You know what I mean? Or is he going to sell? Is he not going to sell? He should have sold. Why didn't he sell? He got offered $3 billion. Like, how does that impact your life on a daily basis? It doesn't impact my life on a daily basis. Whatever. That's his team. He bought it. He paid for it. He can run it however he wants. He wants to run in the ground, run in the ground.
Right.
He wants to spend like George Steinbrenner used to spend in the 80s and 90s. He can spend like George Steinbrenner. Has he made some bad decisions? I think the records show that he has made some bad decisions. Mm-hmm. I think he's well aware of those bad decisions. Is there some regret? I think there is some regret on some of the guys that he signed. But is he doing it? And I don't want to turn this into like, hey, I'm defending Artie. Has he put forth the best effort to make and somehow get that winning combination to Anaheim to win a championship? I think that he has. Whether it's worked out or it hasn't worked out, or you've gone through 5 GMs in the last 15 years, whatever the case is, you can call that what you want. But I don't believe, until somebody proves me wrong otherwise, I don't believe that Artie Moreno has ever woken up at any point in the last X amount of years that he's owned this team and said, you know what? I want to lose today. This year, let's just pack it in. That dude has got a competitive spirit to no end. That may not be something you want to hear, and I don't care. That's fine. I respect everybody's opinion. I don't judge, whatever. But I'm just saying, he's the owner of the team. He's going to do what he thinks is in the best interest of the organization, best interest for his family. He thought that selling last year, at this point last year, we were all talking about the team's up for sale, or he's exploring the sale. And he thought at that point that was best for him and his family. That was the whole reason, the whole genesis behind it. And as we saw the 5 months, 6 months play out, clearly he's still emotionally attached to the organization. I've said this to you guys before, off air and on air. There's not a dude that loves the Angels and the Angels organization more than Artie. And I'm just telling you, and Carol Moreno, Artie's wife. They love that, or they want nothing more to gift the fan base a championship. I just think for people to get upset about it, I get it. I understand the frustration. But at the end of the day, it's like, okay, this year stunk, especially the last month. For me, my mind is, okay, how are we attacking the offseason? That's my mind isn't about Artie. I think there's going to be some changes. I think there needs to be some changes. I said that last week. But my mind is, all right, how do we do this? Like, I'm a uber competitive guy. For me, it's like I want to wash this crap. If I'm there every day, like Perry, it's like I wouldn't want to be there, because in my mind, I'm looking at the calendar going, October 1st, that's when this stuff changes. That's what because September is what it is. You have to play out the string, right? It's right. Done. It's buried in my mind as a competitive individual. It's like, okay, what do I need to do today that preps me for tomorrow and into October and into the off season, setting aside Shohei because that's a different animal. How am I getting this team for 24 when they arrive in Tempe, Arizona, where I've got the best 40-man roster available to me so that I can compete right off the bat in a very, very difficult division. And I just don't see Artie folding the tent up and say, we'll see what happens at 25, 26, because clearly Texas, Houston, and Seattle are much superior. And they may be. But having had the conversations with them over the years and stuff, and the interactions I've had, I bet that just irks at them, and that competitive nature. I just don't see it. That's why I've always said, I don't think there'll ever be a complete tear-down rebuild where you're going to Mike Trout and saying, this is what we're doing. Right. And, do you want to stay or do you want me to trade you somewhere else? I don't think we're at that point. I don't think we will get to that point. You never know, because being an owner of a team can be very subjective at times. You wake up, you get a wild hair, you can decide to do a lot of different things, good, bad, and different. But at the end of the day, as fans, we can only control what we can control. If we want to watch, we watch. We want to go to the game, we go to the game. We want to talk about it on a podcast, we can talk about it on the podcast. But all the other stuff, I don't wake up every morning going, man, I wonder what John Carpino's going to do today. Or what's Artie going to do today as far as X, Y, and Z. Nah, it's their decision. They are in the position to make those decisions. And all we can do as fans is sit there and go, hey, I like that. I don't know if I like that. That sucks. Those are the three options that you pretty much have as a fan. Right. And you either are a fan or you're not. That's my 2 cents.
And on that, did you see the latest article by Fletcher about how Mike Trout's going to talk to management in the offseason?
He talks to them every year. I know. They have those and to Mike's credit, and I know Jeff or whoever asked the question about, would you entertain asking them for a trade? I mean, what player in their right mind, unless they're just completely out and they want out, what player in their right mind is going to give an honest answer? It's like, I'm not even going to comment on that, which is exactly what Mike should say in that situation. It's nobody's business. It's nobody's business other than that of Mike Trout and Artie Moreno. That's it. You give us the news when the news happens, if it does happen. Other than that, like, why do I need to be in the know of what Mike's going to ask Artie or demand of Artie, whatever the case may be? I think as fans, we get like, we're privy to so much information nowadays, like information overload, that I think fans at times feel as if they're entitled to more. And they're entitled to being looped in the conversations. What are you going to ask them? Do you think you want to be here? It's like, just be a fan. Just be a fan. Root for the team. Don't root for the team, or be indifferent. Either way, it doesn't matter. But I mean, I'm glad Mike answered the question. Knowing his parents, I'm not surprised he answered that question very diplomatically. And he is never going to telegraph what he's going to do. He never has. And he never will. He's a pretty private person to begin with. And I don't foresee that changing anytime soon.
Yeah.
Should we hit the mailbag,
Good
Jeff?
stuff. Good stuff.
Sorry, did I rant too long?
No, that was excellent. So let's see.
It was tempered.
Nick from Mission Viejo, Robert from Menifee. I think we more than addressed your your Artie Moreno question. Let's see. What else do we got? How about from Tank from Glendale? He says, how are the Halos going to appeal to any free agents in the winter? Will the failed strategy of the analytics for the team for our pitching this year be fixed next year? I think that first one is really important. Right?
I think it's a fair question.
Yeah,
that's a good question. Good job, Tank.
Yeah, I think that's a very fair question for the reasons that we just stated, right? Mm-hmm. Because of everything that has played out over the last 5 weeks and the piling on that has gone on. There's no doubt that players, will have a pause, or agents will have a pause when it comes to the Angels organization. I think from a money perspective, look, the money is going to be the money.
Right.
And at the end of the day, if the Angels are players for a particular free agent, and so is another team, that player is just going to have to make the determination, because the money, for the most part, is going to be pretty equal. Maybe a couple extra million here. It depends at the last minute. Players going to always ultimately make the determination of, where do I want to play? Most players are going to tell you they want to win. Well, there's no doubt everybody wants to win. Nobody wants to just go, unless you're on the back end, on the back nine of your career, that you just say, whatever, I'll just collect a check, and I just say, if we win, we win. If we don't, whatever.
Right.
But for the most part, everyone's pretty competitive in Major League Baseball. They want to win. Winning's fun. Winning's fun in the clubhouse. Winning's fun for a coaching staff. You're a genius as a manager when you win. Fans are happy. Doesn't matter what you charge for beer if you're winning. Parking could be $25, $30, $50, whatever. They're winning. They're winning. We're winning championships. We're going to the playoffs. Who cares? Whatever. Because that's just the mindset. Because everybody loves a winner, right? So the determining factor for the player is like their comfort zone in the conversations with the front office, conversations with whoever the manager is, if it's Phil, if it's somebody else, whatever. You're going to get feedback from the players who are already in the clubhouse. And then it becomes a lifestyle issue. Where do you want to live? Do you want to live in Southern California?
Right.
Living in Southern California does not suck. I will attest to that. I've lived there a couple of times in my lifetime. It doesn't suck. It's pretty nice. Year-round living in SoCal is pretty freaking sweet.
Yeah,
I don't like the taxes part of it, but
yeah, that's a little
the weather
expensive.
taxes. It's a little stiff, but when you're making that kind of money, it's irrelevant, right? And so I think those are the factors that roll into it. If you're bidding, and I'm just as an example, if you're bidding against the Astros, Baltimore, let's just say, if you're the Angels, you might be fighting an uphill battle, right? In Houston, you got a very good team. You got no taxes, the state of Texas. Baltimore, that's a fun young team. That crowd is getting behind them. Their farm system is good. So those are the things where you just start, the list of the pros and cons, like everybody usually does when they're making difficult decisions. So that's right. That's where I stand on it. But it's a very, very fair question, given everything that's gone on over the last 5-6 weeks. It's a very fair question that will more than likely pop up through this offseason.
And honestly, I think whoever's decision it was to make those changes via analytics from the folks in the front office for the pitching staff, being that the pitching staff last year was top 5, top 6 in the league in terms of starting pitching ERA. Oh, let's try to fix something that isn't broken. That person, if that was Perry Manassian's decision to do that, he should just fire himself. And I'm a big Perry Manassian guy. I think he's been doing a great job. But if that was his choice, now granted, if he took, the advice from his analytics department, and he still has some responsibility in that. But fire that whole staff. Get rid of those guys. Honestly. And I think
what was the question? What was the second part of that question that Tank asked?
Sure.
It was with the change to the analytics.
But do we know
the pitching?
Do we know the specifics of the change or changes?
Jeff Fletcher detailed some of it out. Going for strikeouts.
Who did he speak to? Was Perry quoted in that?
I'd have to look.
So
but
that's
I don't believe it was Perry that was quoted. I think it was
it Alex Hammond?
sources.
He actually did a deep dive, Jeff Fletcher. He did like a really good investigative.
Listen, I like Fletch a lot. I think he's a great writer. I love his stories, especially game stories, because he writes like the people I used to read when growing up, the true game stories. You know what I mean? It kind of it took you from the first inning to the end. Yeah, I just love that kind of stuff. I wish there was more of that in baseball.
I miss that and box scores.
Yeah, that box. Speaking of which, fantasy baseball stuff. Like when I used to be a commissioner, the box scores. I used to tally before computers and all that stuff. I used to tally by hand from the box scores. But to me, I won't speak to that unless there is a specific quote as to how things were done last year and how things are being done this year and what's the delta between the two. Because I think otherwise it's just speculation. And I'm not privy to those conversations. All I can tell you is that A, B, C, and D performed this way a year ago. A, B, C, and D have performed poorly this year.
Yeah.
Right? What happened and how they got there, I don't know. And so I don't want to assume anything, and I don't want to put words in anybody's mouth. That's why I was specific as to the question and how it was phrased. Because is it just analytics? And we've had this conversation a million times. Analytics could be very, very good, right? Mm-hmm. And the analytics could very well support the idea of taking those players that were very good last year and making them better this year. And if that's the case, where's the disconnect? Right. What happened? Was it the dissemination of that information? Right? Because we as individuals and we've talked about this before, we soak up information differently. Our understanding of information is completely different. All three of us can listen to the exact same thing and interpret it completely differently, or hear something that the other two never even thought of. You know what I'm saying? And so there's all these variables that go into it. The person who's doing the dissemination, the individual who's receiving the information, and then trying to make it all work together. And so that's why I don't like talking about it. I get where people are coming from, but there is a big question as to, and I think last show we did the exact same thing. Why did these guys regress after having such good numbers and good seasons last year? Where's the regression coming from? Is it the individual? Because we don't know. Like, did they stop listening to it? Did they not implement it? Or did they not understand it? So I think that just needs to play out. Right?
Yeah, and Victor, if it's not working in real time, can't you just say, "Oh, fuck it, it's not working. Let's go back to the old way."
One would absolutely think when you, because especially from a pitching perspective, it's hard, right? Because what's the threshold nowadays? 22 starts, 23 starts. It's like nobody goes 30 starts anymore. That used to be the end game, right? 30 starts. If I don't make 30 starts, I suck as a starting pitcher. That was just the mindset of guys. So pitching is much harder to determine because from one start to the next, Tyler Anderson on Sunday afternoon had a no-hitter into the sixth inning. And then all hell broke loose. It's 10-4 Oakland now in the top of the eighth.
Just as we hit record.
As we're doing the show. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So start to start, it's hard. But when you start seeing a trend, and with everything that we use nowadays, tools to measure everything from spin to exit velocity to torque to whatever, access, everything. Once you start seeing that trend, that's when you got to slam on the brakes and say, because you're right. 5 months into it, and they're still not very good, and they're still trending in the wrong direction.
Yeah,
there should be no excuse for that, none whatsoever. And so I agree with you on that point, Chuck.
What's the next? Keep them coming, Jeff.
All right, let's stick with pitching. Who among the Angels' current pitching staff would you keep going into 2024?
You kind of have to keep everybody right now.
You do.
Yeah. I mean, Jaime Barria, he's had a tough year, man. He's had a tough year.
I think he's on
still
the out.
young, and I look, at the end of the day, it just becomes a roster crunch, right? Because you've got a 40-man roster. You got guys that are getting to that point in the minor leagues where they either need to be added or become free agents. And so it becomes that roster crunch. Like, what do you do? Remember Chris Rodriguez, right? Who always the back issue guy, the pitcher in the minor leagues. That was one of those questions like 3 years ago. Like, what do you do with him? You love the promise of the arm.
You can't count on him.
But he's always hurt.
Right.
So,
It's those type of conversations that happen I'm sure they're going on right now, the assessment of the year. And as you look at how you have to assess your 40-man roster and who you have to add to it based on time in the minors, those questions will have to happen with like Jaime Barria. Can you afford to keep him and still add the guys that you need? If it becomes a roster number, I think he's gone.
Yeah. But to your point, I think that like the Cannings, the Sandovals, obviously, unfortunately, nobody claimed Tyler Anderson. But we're
you
stuck
talk about
stuck with this guy.
The
But
CBT.
to the analytics question, Victor, here's a guy that I don't think anybody thought that he was going to have a sub-3 ERA for the Angels. We were kind of hoping maybe high threes, even if in the low fours, I think we'd be happy if he gave us a quality starts, right? Which is a 4.50 ERA. I think most Angel fans would be happy if he gave us quality innings. Okay, he hasn't been able to do that.
Right.
And then Sandoval's just up and down, and don't get me started on him. Detmers is just all over the place. Canning shows so much promise. He's got his strikeout numbers are great. So are Detmers actually. But these guys they need to go long. They need to go deep in these games, and they just can't.
Well,
they just can't.
If they're not being brought up in the minor league system to work deep in games, it's never going to happen at the major league level because we got to the point.
That's part of the philosophy, I think.
Well, there's no doubt that needs to change. It needed to change 3 years ago. That was one of the things I've talked to those guys about.
Let's save their arms in the minors for the future in the majors. Yeah. But if you're not giving them the opportunity to go long and go deep into games in the minors, then what are you doing? They get to the majors and they're gassed by the 5th or 6th inning.
Well, I don't know that they're gassed by the 5th or 6th inning, Chuck. I think the problem is that we have, as fans, maybe front office personnel, have been conditioned to believe that if you max everything out, the chase for velocity and spin, if you max everything out for the 5 innings, if it's 100 pitches in 5 innings, you've done your job. And I think there's a group of individuals named agents that have basically told their clients that all you have to do is get through 5 innings, max it all out, and you're going to get paid. And that's exactly what's going on. You'll get the exception to the rule, the guys that work, the Verlander, Scherzers, the old school dudes, because that's how they were brought up, right? And I think that's where that mindset and the expectation needs to change from an organization, regardless of the organization, the A's, the Angels, it doesn't matter. Whoever the top dog is from a philosophical standpoint, like I think we touched on this a couple episodes ago about Nolan Ryan when he took over in Texas. Like, this is the expectation. Like, no longer are you going to go 100 pitch. And please, for the love of God, get rid of this fictitious 100 pitch thing that becomes like this stumbling block. Everybody starts to stutter.
Yes.
And don't know what to say because of he's got 100 pitches.
Lordy.
That has got to change as well. And so it's really just the conditioning of the mindset and the physical that starts right when they come into your organization. They really does. And that's because if they're doing it here with the expectation of, listen, if you don't do it here, you're never going to get up here. I guarantee you'll get guys to do that. I guarantee you'll get guys to work deeper. Yeah. And once they get to the big leagues, it becomes the expectation of, look, if you're good, you're going to get paid no matter what. And you're going to get paid more and become more valuable to an organization as a starting pitcher if you work deeper into games. If you start shortening games up by you working deeper, that makes everybody as a collective better on the pitching staff. It means more rest for the relievers, makes you look good, even sucking up an inning or two to save a bullpen. You give up an extra earned run. Who cares? If you're good, you're going to get paid. But we got to get out of this mindset of, just air it out. Who gives a shit? 96-mile-an-hour hard slider, second pitch of the game. It's like in the left-handed batter's box or right-handed batter's box. It's like
sweeper.
Sweeper. Shit. How's that worked out?
Sorry, I had to throw that.
How many
in.
Tommy Johns on the docket for this year with the sweeper crap?
Yeah, I know.
All right, Jeff.
Give us a couple good ones to finish off here.
All right.
Not that the other ones weren't good.
No, these are good.
No, they're great.
How about from Angel in Rancho Cucamonga? Do you guys think we're giving our young guys too much hype? And the young guys he calls out are Neto, Ohtani, Bachman, Joyce. Are we giving them too much rah-rah because we just don't have anything else to cheer for and we feel like we need to hang our hat on something for the future?
Players, teams, organizations always hype their prospects. Always. It doesn't matter who it is. I mean, look at Jason Dominguez for the Yankees, and he came out and then he had the home run off Verlander. First hit as a big leaguer. Every team does that. Okay. I think what you have to do, and I am one that is always, when it comes to prospects, cautiously optimistic. Even when Mike came up, I was like, because I didn't really see a whole lot of Mike in the minor leagues. And I barely even remember him in spring training. And so when he got to the big leagues, all you heard was the hype of this five-tool type of guy that's built like a linebacker, runs like the wind. So I'm like, okay, let's watch this play out. And then you watch him run, you're like, holy crap. You watch him hit, and you're like, holy shit. And you watch him steal a home run, you're like, okay, I'm buying into it. And then he does it on a consistent basis. Mm-hmm. With the guys at the Angels that he mentioned, you have to wait, especially considering they're being force-fed so quickly at the major league level. And that's why I said early on that let's wait on Ohtani. Let's wait on Mickey Moniak. Let's wait on Zach Neto. I like what I've seen so far, but let's wait. I think there's promise.
Sure.
Are they all going to be, all-stars year in and year out? I don't know. Possibly. But I like what I see. I like how they go about their business. That's an old baseball cliche, meaning they are lunch pail guys.
Right.
They know that they're going to go up on the girders and they're going to go weld and then they're going to stop. The whistle's going to blow. They're going to eat their sandwich out of their metal lunchbox. They're going to get their thermos, take the cup off the thermos, pour themselves a cup of coffee, eat their sandwich, and get back on the girders and go.
Analogy.
That's what I see in those guys. Mm-hmm. So now it's just a matter of watching it and hoping that they take in the information that they're getting at the major league level and applying it to the base that they currently have. All these guys. I mean, Joyce was at Tennessee. Neto was at the C. Campbell. He was at Campbell University.
Yeah.
They're all high-level programs. Shanuel went to FAU. Not quite at that level, but FAU's playing Miami. They're playing Florida. They're playing Florida State. They're playing Stetson. There's a lot of good teams in the state of Florida. So they're playing high-level competition, even though the conference that they're in is not quite on par to an SEC. But the guy can hit a little bit. Whether he develops the power and becomes more than a single guy, can become more of a gap-to-gap guy with the occasional home run, it remains to be seen. So I don't think they're overhyping the players. I think there are characteristics to be excited about, and let that development continue to happen.
Yep.
Indeed.
What do you got, Jeff?
All right. Let's see. Should we go with one last one here?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
All right. So, so everybody knows before we hit record every week, we always start off with the pre-show conversation where Victor goes, and we're going to keep this to 30 minutes tonight, right, guys?
Sorry, man. I
should
get paid by the word.
You're good.
We're getting on a roll. Come on.
All right, we'll do a fun one. From Bob in Napa Valley. What are your go-to cocktails when you're out at a pub or out to dinner? Chuckster, let's start with you.
Okay, if I'm at a pub, I'll do a beer and a Jameson.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm out to dinner, it'll be an old fashioned.
There you go. Victor?
I don't go to pubs, but if I were to go to a pub,
How about an elbow?
I would do Tito's on the rocks with a splash of ginger ale. Out to dinner, Tito's on the rocks with a splash of ginger ale. At a family gathering, Tito's on the rocks, splash of ginger ale.
There
Unless
you
there's
go.
Powerade Zero around.
This episode brought to you by
Yes, sir.
Tito's.
Yeah, there you go.
And by the way, just to do a plug real quick,
Uh-huh.
I like Tito's just fine.
Mm-hmm.
Western Sun, if it's a cheaper vodka, just as good, if not better.
All right.
I'll have to try it out. Okay.
There we go. All right.
Where do they distill that?
I believe they are in Texas.
Texas. Okay. Hey, Jeff, can we do the Jimmy Buffett one?
Sure.
All right.
So from Tim in the Keys, I guess that's down in the Florida Keys. He says, "Rest in peace to
what other keys would there be?
I
The
don't
Black
know.
Keys in Ohio? Seriously, I mean,
You never know. There's something of everything everywhere.
sorry to
Right.
interrupt you. Go ahead, Jeff.
No, I didn't know if it was like an expensive housing community and somewhere that he was showing off.
It's the new development in Florida next to the villages called the Keys.
Right. He says, "What is each of your favorite Jimmy Buffett songs?" Chuck.
Come Monday.
That's a good one. Victor?
I mean, Margaritaville is pretty cool, and Cheeseburger in Paradise. I know I was joking earlier, but I think those are probably the two that I enjoyed the most.
I'm going to go off script and not pick a song. His book, A Pirate Looks at 50, is something that I read several years back when I was in Maui sitting on the beach, and it could not have been more of the perfect read, and just loved learning about him and his story and his background. If you haven't read it before, you're going on vacation and you need a good book to read at the beach or by the pool, highly recommend it.
That's awesome.
Oh, nice.
I'll grab that. Instead of me reading Waging War, the Clash Between Presidents and Congress, 1776 to ISIS.
Wow, that sounds like that's a page turner.
Yeah.
Little light reading there.
Yeah. David Barron's the author. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's thick.
Ain't the first time I heard that, Chuck.
Oh, hey-oh.
That's going to do it for episode 19, folks. For Chuck, Richter, Geoff Stoddart, and Victor Rojas, thank you so much for listening to the AngelsWin podcast. Until next week, until we meet again.
Thank you for listening to the AngelsWin podcast with Victor Rojas, Chuck Richter, and Geoff Stoddart. Go Halos and drive home safely.
Say goodbye.
Yeah, say goodbye.